What's all over the televisions is Giannis Antetokounmpo talk, and I want to play this windy sound, and I want to remind you about something that happened here last week, because I can't unsee what just happened here. I really can't unsee it, okay? We were talking last week about how Ramona Shelburne and Brian Windhorst were reporting very strongly, very credible people, that Jaylen Brown was not being shopped by the Celtics as part of that Giannis trade. Now, it seemed pretty obvious that their source was Boston, and it also seemed very obvious that Boston is incentivized to lie to them. And so now, listen, this was as Mike Ryan was telling you, hey, I'm hearing Jaylen Brown is indeed being offered. So we had Mike Ryan on one side and all of these credible people on the other saying Jaylen Brown's not being offered, including Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe. But clearly their sources were in Boston, and clearly Boston is incentivized to say that. So it seems like they're being lied to if you hear what Windhorst said this morning on Get Up. It is not because all of a sudden Jaylen Brown became available this weekend. It's because the reporters were wrong last week.
The Celtics are stone cold sober, think they're not as good as the Knicks. They're not sure they're going to be as good as the Pacers next year when they come back fully healthy, and they believe they need to upgrade their team. And I am now speculating that if Jaylen Brown doesn't get traded for Giannis, they may trade him somewhere else. So that is one of the things that emerged. Now, Miami understands this. Miami understands that Jaylen Brown is in there. They can't match that. Miami, in recent days, has gone out to try to recruit third and fourth teams to improve their offer.
What do you guys think of the conversation from last week where we were talking about Zaslow saying specifically, none of these reporters know what they're talking about, none of them are credible, and we all agreed Ramona and Brian Windhorst and Gary Washburn of the Boston Globe are credible. Mike was the only one reporting, saying, hey, Jaylen Brown's involved in this deal, and now everyone's conceding, yeah, Jaylen Brown's being offered to Milwaukee. What's interesting, if you're watching the details on this, on some of what's happening, is the semantics that the reporters are playing with here make it obvious to me that Jaylen Brown's only being offered to Milwaukee so far because Boston's worried about if they start shopping for a third team, then everyone's going to know he's available, and then Jaylen Brown's going to get really pissed off when they can confirm that everyone in the league is talking about Jaylen Brown's available.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to talk about the way that the reporters operate, because if you understand, and the more time you spend in this business, and I've started to get a better understanding of, like, it's horse trading, it's favor doing, it's conversations, it's reporting is like that, especially if you're on a specific beat all the time. And so I think Mike Ryan has the advantage of, when he has a story, he comes out and he shares it. There's no expectation for Mike Ryan to continuously come out with new information. So if you're someone who has to have new information all the time, that means on occasion you're going to have to do favors, share reporting that someone wants you to get out there. So I think that happens, or keep reporting quiet that someone wants you to keep quiet in order to get access to more information. I think that, I don't know, well, Mike wouldn't consider himself a reporter. I think he's someone who knows people when he hears things. Sometimes he shares it, sometimes he doesn't. And I think you could also obviously look at Mike Ryan and say that you would guess that his reporting is from local sources, and they would have different incentives the same way that these other reporters have different incentives. But my guess is Mike would say that he doesn't need to share the stuff that he thinks might be a favor to someone else. Other reporters, I think, sometimes do.
This is what I know, though. Mike Ryan, when he's reported things on here, he hasn't gotten anything wrong, not once. And it's not just local sources, because Mike Ryan really likes the whole deal-making, moving and shaking, and being more than a reporter, being in rooms where information is trafficked, and he hasn't gotten anything wrong yet. But, Greg, you mentioned last week, you're saying that a reporter is only as good as his sources. I do believe Mike Ryan is reporting. I don't know the classification you're making or the distinction you're making when you say he's not a reporter, but he is reporting.
Go ahead.
Listen, when a reporter talks to a source, whether it's an agent, whether it's somebody connected with a team, whether it's somebody on the periphery, that source has a vested interest. He has a reason for sharing this information. It might not always be accurate information. He may be trying to mislead. He may be trying to protect Jaylen Brown's ego by saying, no, we're not going to include him in any trade talks, when that isn't the truth. So I think you take everything with a grain of salt at this point. The decision's going to happen, right, in 24 hours or less, probably. So right now it seems to be two teams.
The distinction that I'm making.
Oh my God, breaking news. Brian Windhorst on Get Up just said Giannis Antetokounmpo to be traded before the draft.
So Greg Cody just reported in the next 24 hours.
I broke that story. Yeah, apparently.
How does that math line up, though? Tomorrow the draft is at, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock? Are we at 24
Probably
hours
8
yet?
o'clock. You want to get as much audience as possible. That means 5 p.m. out on the West Coast. Probably 8 o'clock.
Yeah. So 36 hours.
The distinction I was making is that on some of these people who are reporters, like they make their living reporting. And when you make your living reporting, you need relationships and information. And in order to maintain that, occasionally things are, and if you're reporting constantly, occasionally things are going to be wrong, or you're going to sit on things that you don't want to share for fear of ruining a relationship that will have more value later. And I was saying, not in a diminishing way about Mike, but I don't think Mike would call himself a reporter. Like, he doesn't make his living breaking news. He occasionally, and I think to some degree you could argue that makes the things that he says a little bit more credible, because it's like, look, I have no reason to share this. If I have any questions about it, I'm not going to share it. If I know something to be certain, and I could care less whether these relationships are there or not, because his livelihood is not dependent on having these people still speak to him. I think ultimately someone who does reporting all the time is going to be like more valuable as a reporter because they are a reporter. But I think you're right. When people pop up who understand how this industry works, have connections, and say, look, I have no reason to do this. I'm not getting a bonus. There's no bump for me. No one, this cachet is not value to me. They pop up and say, I kind of know this to be true. We should listen to them, Mike and beyond.
I want to ask you, as somebody who both understands business and understands the feelings of athletes and where it is athletes get their feelings hurt in business. We were making the distinction last week whether or not Jaylen Brown has the right to be hurt/insulted. And the distinction I was making between those two things is that there are any number of times that you can be hurt without being insulted. Right. But if you're insulted, then you're likely to be hurt. Does Jaylen Brown have a right to feel hurt or insulted that the Celtics would be shopping him to anybody?
So word choice matters a lot in this. So the right, I would push back on that even as a framing. Feeling hurt and insulted, it ain't up to you. It's not up to the person who is hurt or insulted. It's not up to the people who are trying to protect someone's feelings, whether you're hurt or insulted. Like, I can think of a number of times in my life, inside and outside of work, where I knew what the person was doing. I knew, or what the company was doing. I knew what I signed up for and what risk I was exposing myself to. And still, when it comes around and it's thrown in your face, you can't control the fact that you're being hurt. Every relationship that you get into, romantic, professional, or otherwise, there's a risk that you could be hurt or insulted by something that someone does, and you know that it could happen. And when it happens, you don't know how you're going to respond to it. So
I'm not making those things synonyms, though. Hurt. I'm saying
right.
He's got a right to be hurt, but not insulted.
Yeah. Okay. I guess Again, I don't necessarily understand the distinction. Like, he has, and I wouldn't use the word right. Like, he's going to be hurt and insulted. All of us would be. Any professional person would be. If someone said, there's someone out there more valuable, we'll give you away, especially in sports, because sports, and probably not just sports. I spent my life in sports, so I feel that way. I feel that it's kind of unique in this way where there's an emotional connection. There's a we're a family thing. There's a we're brothers. We're going to do this together. We're going to go through this. Like, it's something that's preached over and over again. I'm sure when they were on that run to the championship and when he was the MVP of the finals, there were a number of times where we got in this room. No one believed in us. We got to stick together. Okay, I believe it. Beginning last year, Tatum's out. We're going to put all this on you. We need you. You're our guy right now. We're going to build this around you. We need you to keep us afloat. We love you. We care about you. A couple months later,
when you put it like that, it's kind of insulting.
Yeah,
No, but
Giannis is available.
No.
Maybe we'll shop that ass.
The reason, though, that I think that insulted is not the way that Jaylen Brown should feel is because empirically, any of us can put those two players side by side, and everyone would say Giannis is a better player than Jaylen. I don't know if Dominique believes anyone in this industry is better than he is, but if I were to say that ESPN is trading you because they have somebody, whoever they think most people would think is better than you at this. I think you can be hurt by that. I don't think you can be insulted by it. I think it's a compliment.
Can I say, it's like, again, to my point, it's about the relationship. There are people who are more attractive than I am. I still would be hurt and insulted if my wife was like, let me trade up. Like, yeah, he's handsomer, but I thought we had something here, baby. Like, that's the same situation.
Oh, but
I won you a championship.
It's not the same situation.
I'm not your baby. I won you a championship.
That is not the same
I think he's right.
situation.
Giannis
Same thing. Yeah, good analogy.
No, it's a terrible
So
analogy.
okay, here we go. How about this analogy? There are some things that are factually true. If someone told me, hey, you're a little slim, I would be insulted if they said that to my face, or like, hey, you look a little fat there.
No.
I'll be, whether it's true or not does not mean that it can't be an insult.
You can be insulted if your wife says that she is trading you for a handsome player to be named later. That you can be insulted by. You cannot be insulted by she's replacing you with someone as handsome as Giannis. Like, that's not an insult to Jaylen Brown. Look at how valuable Jaylen Brown is. He gets you one of the top 50 players of all time.
You cannot tell me that it's not an insult to feel like you've done everything that an organization could want from you. You've done it all. You were the MVP of their most recent championship. They lost their best player. You put the team on your back, and you made this team, not just their best player. They got rid of Holiday. They lost Big Zingaling. They lost a bunch of the most influential or impactful players on that team. And you know who stood up? Jaylen Brown. And he made this team a top-ranked team in the East, and they were competitive. And then immediately after that, they're like, hey, you know this kind of perpetually injured guy who hasn't won a championship as recently as you have? Let's give that a spin. It's going to be insulting. And you're saying empirically. This is not about empirical data. It's about relationships.
I said this already. I'll say it again here, and I'll use the example you gave, Dan, where you don't expect Alexander Barkov to immediately come back next season and be the guy that he was. I think part of what Jaylen Brown can be frustrated with is, why is it definitely me you're trading and not Jason Tatum?
The thing that I'm objecting to when Dominique says, and you guys say that it's a good example, guys, this isn't real love. Like, what are you doing? It's business. Like, what are you doing? It's not your wife or spouse and son. Like, what? It's business.
You, of all people, you're trying to argue for me that somehow it's easy to disentangle relationships from business? You?
Yes.
What?
Because I was hurt by ESPN. I was not insulted. I understood what they did. It's a business move.
I don't understand how you're making that distinction, but maybe it's minutia. You can be insulted and hurt. I guess I don't understand the difference necessarily. And just because you can understand the argument or the rationale for a decision doesn't mean that it doesn't still feel like an insult.
But I think it's a two-way situation, particularly in sports, I think, with Jaylen Brown as a great example. The insult and the hurt goes in both directions. If Jaylen Brown is leveraging his power to try to get out of Boston, to try to be traded elsewhere, he has a right to say, nothing against Boston, it's business. When the opposite is true, if the Boston Celtics think that they can get better by trading Jaylen Brown, that's business.
Right. I think that we often want to make these distinctions and make someone right and someone wrong in these conversations when it's not necessarily true. I think Boston is completely justified in doing that, just like I think players demanding a trade are completely justified.
Yes.
I think Giannis saying I'll only play in these places, completely justified in doing it. I think LeBron saying I'm going to do a press conference and raise money for the Boys and Girls Club only to spurn the team that drafted me. He's completely within his right to do it. But pretending like because he's within his right that the person on the other side is not going to be hurt, to me seems silly. Like, I don't understand why we can't accept that there's that it's okay for both people to be justified in hurt and insulted. That's all I'm saying is, yeah, they're right. It's business. He knew what it was when he got drafted. He knew what could happen the whole time. Still don't mean it's not going to hurt.
And I think the Celtics are looking at it from a perspective of, all right, we got two guys. One guy seems to be bought into what it is that we're doing here as an organization. One guy seems to be bought in on what he's doing outside of the organization, right? You You look at what the smoke that's been there with Jaylen Brown, the Nike deal that went awry, the reason why he wasn't on the Olympic team. Like, there's stuff in his past that's there that maybe the Celtics know a lot more about, and they're like, ooh, we got to get rid of this thing.
Right. And I think from his side, he would say, I've done the things that I'm supposed to do, and I'm still not getting the rewards that I expect. And while I get what you're saying, is like, how can I not be on the All-Star or on the Team USA? Like, I've done it all. Like, how can I not be the one that you want to build around just because I wasn't drafted high enough? Like, I played just as well as you could have expected Jason Tatum to play. I am healthier. Why am I the one that's on the trading block? Like, I understand all the decisions in this. What I'm pushing back on is just because you can point to reasons why Jaylen Brown is less likely to be that guy doesn't mean that in his head, in his experience, he's not justified in being like, but why me? What more do I have to do? And I think a lot of the things that people point to as reasons why they wouldn't want to stick with him are easily defensible based on the way that he, from his perspective, he's been being treated. He's been being talked about. He was the one that was being shopped and then went on to be the best player on that team in the finals. They were shopping him before. Like, can these guys coexist? Who's the one that they were always going to move? The lower, well, not even the lower draft pick, but the guy who was not the number one option that they wanted to keep. I get where he's coming from, and I also recognize that just looking at their raw ability, like Jason Tatum, a healthy Jason Tatum is probably more likely to build around, and given his persona, he seems like an easier one to work with.
He's a better player. Just knock it off. Like Jaylen Brown,
Achilles.
Jaylen Brown couldn't go to his left.
Off an Achilles.
We spent an entire series where they lost to the Celtics.
Giannis couldn't shoot free throws.
Where they lost to the Heat.
Like, you act like everyone, there's not flawed people. Oh, we can ESPN. You want to first take it? We can first take it.
Tatum is a better player than Brown.
Okay.
Like, knock it off, man. Jesus. Like, he's a better player. Hard stop. Like, he's just better.
When you factor in the health issue, though, that's a question mark. That makes them more even. I still think Tatum's better than Jaylen Brown.
This is what I would say to you, is like, you may be right. However, how many players would you say that same thing about when talking about Jalen Brunson? And Jalen Brunson was clutch in these moments, but there are lots of players in the league where you would throw your hands and yell, he's just a better player. But in the moment when you needed him, who stood up? If I'm Jaylen Brown, I'm like, look, you can say all that stuff about him being better. I'm not saying this is true, but how could you not be the person who was the MVP in the most important moments and say, like, yeah, you can say all this stuff about that guy, but you know who had it when you needed it? And I get it. It's a result of Tatum taking some of that attention. I get all of that. But the fact of the matter is, I get, and I'm not arguing against you. I'm not saying that Tatum or that Brown is better. I'm saying that if I'm Brown, I'm like, I'm better. I'm the guy.
That's fine. All NBA players feel some form of that. It's how they got to where they are. The thing that this ignores is that Giannis is better than both of them. Like, it just sort of skips right past that part. Doesn't matter. Hurt or insult either one of them. What you'd be getting back is better than both of them, but it can be downgraded because you fear the injury and the age if you want to do that. But Giannis is better than the both of them, and now Jaylen Brown is available, and I think it's interesting that everyone got this wrong, that the reporting on all of this was wrong.
I mean, the reporters that I believe are credible, the ones you mentioned, Ramona Shelburne, Brian Winters, Gary Washburn. Ironically, they're the ones who ended up having this wrong.
But we're assuming they had it wrong, and they just were, well, they were saying what they were being told, and things change as they go along. So, like,
but you're saying that things change when in reality it might just be like, nah, Boston didn't want anybody to know.
No, it didn't change, Dominic. It was floated, and then Windhorst and Ramona were sent out there with what those sources said to say it's not true to protect Jaylen Brown's feelings, and now we know. Now as it gets close, everyone knows, oh, no, Jaylen Brown is on the table. We don't have to protect his feelings anymore. The information was inaccurate. It was meant to protect Jaylen Brown from discussing with his family all the shit we're discussing right now, which the Celtics don't want around their team.
Yeah, because if Jaylen Brown comes back and the trade falls through, they don't care about his feelings if the trade works out. I get all of that. That makes sense. My point is, when you have relationships with people and organizations and you ask them a question, they tell you the answer to the question, you can't then go and say the opposite. It goes back to the original conversation, is like, those relationships matter. Even if you do further reporting and you find out that what they're telling you is not true, you cannot say anything, but you can't then go out there and say, like, yeah, what this person just told me, completely false. It's just the way that the business works. We can be naive about it if we want to, but like not every industry is going to be completely beyond reproach.